Joe Biden's mental state now has to be looked at, particularly in the light of the decision-making that has to occur in relation to, say, Russia and the Ukraine and the free world's involvement in what could be a war that is brewing in that part of the world. Joe Biden, is he really holding it together enough to be in leadership? Well, here on the morning show, it's time for us to head to world politics, and I have Rikki Lambert with me. The free world has two leaders who both look like they're going to come under fire, maybe are already on fire, or is it that they're saying things that are firing others up? I'm talking here of Bojo and also Biden. So we've got Boris Johnson. Firstly, I want to ask you about him, his leadership in the UK. He's under a lot of attack at the moment, particularly over a COVID party.
Yeah, look, and not the first one that Boris Johnson's been accused of being a part of. This one, the latest controversy has been about what he had told Parliament, whether he had misled Parliament about this party occurring. It's one of those bad looks that you have in politics where you're seen to have a rule for yourselves and as a politician, and then there's a different rule for the rest of the public living under these restrictions.
Is Boris Johnson going that poorly, though? I mean, it seems that the Labor Party are having enough problems in the UK trying to actually get any striking distance on him.
Yeah, it's been a mystery in one sense because Labor has been struggling for so long to lay a glove on the Conservative Party there. I think there's some social media keyboard warriors and elements of the media that have decided to try and help the Labor Party somehow close the gap with the Conservatives by helping Boris Johnson to look like a bit of a dill. Boris Johnson certainly does his own pretty good effort of looking like a dill, but you've got to remember the voters end up deciding who's going to form government, and it's every 5 years they have an election there. And I just wonder, Kevin Rudd got into a little bit of trouble in New York visiting a particular nightclub, and that endeared him to voters at the time. So I just wonder whether Boris Johnson, with the average British voter, might actually think, well, look, good on him having a beer. I didn't like those restrictions anyway.
Right. Well, let's go to another perhaps more important discussion point. Is Joe Biden losing it? And there's some discussion out of a press conference where he was asked a question about inflation, and then later, as the journalists were leaving, somebody in that crowd called out something to the effect to give an answer about that you never gave an answer on. That is the 7% inflation in the United States, the highest in 40 years. And Joe Biden's response was this.
That's a great asset. More inflation. What a stupid son of a bitch.
And when asked about it, the reporter, Mr. Dorsey, by Fox News, to which he does report for, he gave this response.
But somebody came up to me in the briefing room a few minutes later and said, "Did you hear what the president said?" And I said, "No, what?" They said, "He called you a stupid SOB." And I said, "Did he say SOB?" And the person said, "No."
So, Rikki, here we have the situation where Joe Biden has appeared to maybe not answer the question. Then he's appeared to maybe say that inflation is a good thing. Then he's called a reporter, presumably an SOB. We won't say the words again, but you have heard them. Has Joe Biden's mental state now has to be looked at, particularly in the light of the decision-making that has to occur in relation to, say, Russia and the Ukraine and the free world's involvement in what could be a war that is brewing in that part of the world? Joe Biden, is he really holding it together enough to be in leadership?
It's a good question, Wayne. You've been kicking around off the air about whether Biden will run for a second term even. There's always been the speculation that Kamala Harris is sort of the shadow president waiting in the wings for Biden to fall over. But coming back to that Russia-Ukraine conflict you mentioned, I've been talking about it on Country Viewpoint about what that's doing to Australian wheat prices in the upward direction. But one of the concerns about that conflict is driving oil prices to 7-year highs. We're feeling it at the Bowser here, but so are Americans as well. And what America does in relation to Russia making a move on the Ukraine will have a direct impact on inflation. So there you have foreign policy and global security driving a domestic inflation debate. So maybe Biden's sarcastic comment wasn't that sarcastic after all, because he sees it as, well, we're trying to put a leash on Russia, and our domestic consumers are paying for it.
Certainly paying for it. Thanks to Twitter for the audio. It is a significant development, one that thinks, with Joe Biden now being looked at in particular about his comments, which were, of course, while the microphone was left switched on, but still pretty unsavoury if they were directly directed at a reporter.